his polished black shoes, clunky like the ones the East Germans wore. The men had arrived a few minutes earlier. Helen had peeked out the window the moment she heard the rattle of a key in the lock, and she'd spotted them on the doorstep out front. Unexpected visitors, and neither looked familiar, but the mention of Lewis was a thread she could work with. The wheels of the tape recorder kept turning, twin planets in rotation, absorbing every word. She was afraid to move lest the floor creak, giving her away. Too late to announce her presence. Was she wrong to leave the recorder on? To be listening at all? Probably. Undoubtedly. The whole thing was almost certainly way above her clearance, but she'd never heard any conversation like it. From her brief observation, she discerned that both men carried themselves with an air of competence and seniority, experienced hands in a special order, one which she aspired to join. It was like eavesdropping on a conversation of the gods. Nonetheless, she was off limits, and it was time to bow out. She should switch off the recorder, remove the headphones, and quietly wait for them to leave. With a sigh, she reached for the off switch. Then the needles flicked on the dials as the younger man spoke, and her hand stopped in midair. He'd lowered his voice, and Helen, unable to help herself, squinted in concentration to make out the words. "Do the Effies know?" "Not a thing, or not since Jack kicked the bucket in 72. "Jack? You mean, of course. He was a friend?" "Of a sort. The enemy of my enemy, that whole business. Last of his kind. Here, drink up." A splash of whiskey, then silence. Helen was transfixed. What in the hell were they talking about? The Effies? The zoo? The pond, the bay, and the lake, and now a reference to a former power figure named Jack. Probably another cryptonym. Everything about the conversation was baffling, and not just because she didn't know the lingo. For starters, why speak in code? The whole point of a safe house was to make sure you felt secure enough to dispense with the mumbo-jumbo. You kicked back, put your feet up, traded all the secrets you wanted in the plainest possible language. Safely. And with absolute confidence. That's how she'd rigged these houses, 4 of them in all across the zones and neighborhoods of West Berlin, available at any given moment for privileged access and secret consultation. Each house was clean, unobtrusive, and practically soundproofed against the curiosity of neighbors, due mostly to her own efforts during the past year. She was particularly proud of the job she'd done at this location, a crumbling brick townhouse a block south of Alt Moabit. She had labored zealously to craft the most secure possible environment for the company's case officers and their agents, and for whomever else among their friends might temporarily need shelter from the cold and lonely hazards of their profession. Why, then, this strange collection of buzzwords? Unless it wasn't so much a code as a special language, and yes, there was a difference, an exclusive lexicon for some obscure fraternity of operatives. Perhaps for someone with a higher security clearance, this would be no mystery at all. She also wondered how the men had gotten a key. Helen knew the identities of all 6 key holders for this house. Someone had given them a key without telling her. That in itself was a serious breach of security. In addition, the meeting was unscheduled. When people wanted to use one of her facilities, one of the agency's facilities, the rules said they were supposed to provide at least 6 hours' notice so she could ensure that no one else would barge in on them and that conditions would be welcoming and ready. Before she took over, embarrassing run-ins and overlaps had been infrequent but not all that unheard of, a state of affairs which the chief of station had seemed to accept as an occupational hazard. Helen had taken pains to eliminate such snafus. It was all in the details, controlling the leaseholders, managing traffic, making the places easy to use, clean, and functional. She had carefully vetted the current cover tenant for this house, a Pan Am stewardess with agency connections whose work schedule meant she was home only on Wednesdays and Sundays, and even on those days could clear the premises at a moment's notice. There were contingencies for unannounced meetings, of course, and also for use by operatives and agents who weren't regular customers. Espionage emergencies were hardly uncommon in Berlin, but the meeting Helen was hearing downstairs had none of the snap or crackle